Switzerland is a country known for chocolate and cheese and clocks and the Alps. But many people also know Switzerland as being a direct democracy. It's a little bit unusual in the West, at least, if not the entire world, in that the referendum is a central element, or the central pillar, you could say, to the Swiss democracy, how the country is run, how laws are created, and how decisions are taken in this country. Other countries have referenda. Brexit was a referendum. The US state of California has lots of referenda. But they happen constantly in Switzerland, and this is how the country is guided. 2 or 3 or 4 times a year there is a referendum, or actually better, a referendum day. And on those days, usually there's multiple referenda to vote on that day, just out of convenience, I guess. And whilst a lot of people might realize that referenda happen in Switzerland, and that Switzerland is a direct democracy, many people outside of the country may not know much more about it than that, or how they come to pass, or what it's like to actually vote in a referendum. So I'd like to explain that to you now. So first of all, I won't go into the details of Swiss government and the structure of the Swiss government, because that's very complicated on its own. But suffice it to say that in the Swiss constitution, the referendum is a very central element to how the country is guided. The people get to choose to vote on individual laws, yes or no, or on major decisions like treaties and so forth. And then the government as such is a weak body, federal government, and is mostly has the role of implementing the will of the people. For the purposes of this video, when I say the word government, I'm not referring to the whole parliament. I'm referring to the executive committee, which is of course representing the parliament. The executive committee is 7 or 8 members, depending on how you count, the president and the first ministers, and they are assigned on a rotational basis and divided carefully according to language, region, and political party. So it's not like the UK, where there's a government in power that's dominated by one particular party. It's more a cross-party body in that sense. So referenda, how do they happen? Well, the Swiss people vote on everything. They vote on big emotive issues like immigration with referenda, and they also vote on minor, relatively dry issues like financing of infrastructure projects and stuff like that. So how do referenda come to pass? Well, anybody can launch or force a referendum by getting 100,000 signatures. If you get the required number of signatures, then in a certain period of time, I think it's 100 days, if you could do that, then you force a referendum, and the government will have to stage the referendum. It's not usually individual people. It's usually a political party or an interest group or labor union that would be the initiant or the proponent for a referendum, and they would bring it to pass by getting the signatures, and the government has to respond and hold the referendum on behalf of that interest group. The government itself must in fact have a referendum if they plan to change the constitution or do some other important things, enter into international treaties and so on. So this happens all the time. Referenda are usually scheduled several months in advance, up to a year in advance, so people know they're coming. And once a referendum is launched or forced, the date of that referendum will be set sometime in the near future, let's say next year, maybe at some point. And a kind of campaigning will begin, and the different political parties will sort of take their positions, and there will be debates on television, in the news, and the actual government will take a position on the referendum. And then finally, referendum day comes, and you receive your packet, and you're able to vote. So the required number of signatures are gathered, submitted, and the government will have to respond by holding the referendum, or the government, for some reason, needs to change the constitution or wants to change the constitution, so a referendum must be held. So then what happens is the proponents of the initiative, whatever it may be, will start campaigning for it, and the different political parties will take sides, and they'll formally publish their stance on that referendum. And then finally, the government will formally publish its stance. And at the end, when you receive your packet, you'll get a lot of useful information. And I'm going to go through this and show you what's in this nice packet. It's very well organized. A lot of useful information about the content of the referendum and what the proponents say and what the detractors say, and finally what the government's official position is. And the government does come out and say, we recommend you vote yes or no on the referendum. And that's how that works. So we'll go through the details and what you get in the referendum pack. Just an interesting fact, 93% of Swiss people vote by mail. And just interesting to note that it is possible to go to a polling station, but they're usually only open for like 2 hours on the day. So it's not quite the same as some other countries where every school and church is set up as a polling station and they're open for 12 or 14 hours. No, it's open for a couple of hours on the Sunday because the vast majority of people vote by post. And referenda are always held on a Sunday from what I can tell. There may be a tradition there about letting you vote because pre-mail voting, perhaps voting happened in association with going to church. I don't know, I'm only guessing that. But anyway, they're on Sundays. Everybody receives a packet. You do not have to register to vote in Switzerland. Every Swiss citizen is automatically registered to vote, you could say, by mere dint of the fact that you are registered anyway with your local council, your local town. You have to be registered in this country anyway, just for a number of other reasons, for tax declaration and all sorts of other things. You have to register here. You can't live off the grid in Switzerland. And because of that, they know who you are and where you are. So you will just receive automatically the pack. And now I'd like to show you what's in the pack. Okay, so let's have a look at what you actually get in the envelope. So the package comes like this. It's got your actual name on it. And you open the envelope and it has all the following contents in it. So I'll kind of go through that. So you've got a little bit of information about how you can actually vote. And this basically says what time the polling station is open on what day. There is an actual referendum coming on the 9th of June. And this is basically saying that there's been an adjustment to the opening times of the polling stations, and they're going to close at 11 o'clock. They're open from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., it looks like. And in the town that I live in, there are only about a half a dozen voting stations. The whole thing is done by the town. In other words, you receive the voting packet from your local community. So that's just a little leaflet giving you some information about where you can vote and what time to vote. However, as I said, 93% of the people vote by post, and that's according to the election authorities. You get a kind of a voter identification card. This needs to be returned with your ballot paper. Your ballot paper itself goes into a sealed envelope so that they don't automatically associate who voted for what. But you need to either take this with you if you're going to vote in person or return it in the envelope when you send it back. That way they know you voted and you can't vote more than one time. So this is your sort of voter ID card. And it came in the envelope, which, by the way, the envelope was how the stuff came to you, but you also use the same envelope to send it back. Then we have the actual voting paper, and this is the actual ballot, and it has the referenda. There's 4 referenda on the 9th of June, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in the referendum, for each referendum, you vote literally with a yes or a no. So the referendum itself is phrased as a question in both German and French in this case. So it's a question, and you literally write yes or no, or ja or nein, or oui or no. The second referendum is also phrased as a question, yes or no, the third and the fourth. So you literally just answer yes and no. So these are the 4 subjects that are being voted upon in the referendum referendum Sunday coming up on the 9th of June at the federal level, so the national Swiss level. In addition, in my own town, they're taking the opportunity to let us have a vote or a referendum on a local matter. So this is the voting paper for the local referendum, the matter that's being decided locally in the city of Thun. And once again, it's a question that I'll have to answer yes or no, ja or nein. And this is a booklet to give some information about that subject. And then your voting papers will go into this envelope, which you can seal, and that gives you some privacy to do with your vote, since you are sending your voter ID card along with it. So that would help give you some privacy as to how you voted. So then the information that comes with these, with the referendum, is very comprehensive and good. So on the national level, there are basically 4 things that are being voted on this time, and they're listed quite clearly what they are. There are 2 referenda items that have to do with controlling health insurance costs in this particular referendum Sunday. There's 1 referendum item to do with protecting the integrity of your own body. I think it's to do with not being forced to have immunizations, for example. And then the last one is a law about loosening up the regulations around setting up solar panel farms and wind turbines. It's all about increasing renewable energy sources in Switzerland. They're actually phrasing the proposed law as to do something with guaranteeing the electric supply with renewable energy. So those are the 4 initiatives being voted on. Some of them are usually drier or more sort of boring or sort of mundane than others, and some are more emotive. This time, I wouldn't say any of these are very emotive. The one that's getting the most press is the one about producing a secure, or creating a new law to create a secure electric supply using renewable energy. This one is getting a lot of press. The other ones are getting sort of less press. In the past, they've had referenda on things like controlling immigration, which is obviously very emotive. There was once famously a referendum on forbidding women to wear a burqa, and there's been different things that have made international headlines. But then there's also super boring ones like, shall we give 80 million francs to finance a tunnel extension or a runway extension at the airport? So those are the issues on the national ballot. And then the local one is a very, very dry issue, and it's whether or not a certain sort of area of the city that has some social apartment buildings on it, whether the ownership of that should be transferred to create a new social housing project. So pretty local issue, and you might say a little bit dry. In both cases, the information booklet has a lot of information. The sort of accompanying pamphlet has a lot of information about the actual referendum to help you decide or be informed as to how you want to vote. The subjects have all been debated in the press for the last 6 months, or whatever the lead-up time is for the referendum. The subjects have been debated, and you can read about them in the news, and there's no shortage of sort of normal politicking that goes on around these, because, like I said, the political parties will take a position on all of these and fight tooth and nail sometimes about them. And then the local one for the city of Thun, which is where I live, is there it is. There's sort of a map showing this piece of property and some colors showing how they want to extend it, and it's basically a pretty lengthy, I would say, document describing what to do with this social apartment location and how it's going to be regenerated into sort of a little smart city community thing. So anyway, that's the local one. So let's kind of look at a couple of the way that this main pamphlet is structured. So 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 initiatives, or the 4 proposals that you were having a referendum on, and you flip right over in the back, and here you see 9, 9, 9, yeah, no, 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 yes. This is quite clear. The government's position, their recommendation on how you should vote on each of these. They actually recommend how you should vote. So let's go in and have a look at how this is structured. So you would open it up, and they give you a nice, clear table of contents about every one of the issues. And at first, you get a short summary of the issue. You get the title of the law that's being proposed. You get the background information about it. So what's the situation that's caused this referendum to come about? What was the situation in the country that has caused the people who are forcing the referendum to want to do that. What is the actual referendum item? In other words, it's describing what you're voting on here. And the interesting thing is, normally when there is a referendum that the government itself does not want to pass, in other words, a referendum where the government itself is suggesting to vote no, they will produce what is called a counter proposal. So it's not like you only have a choice of yes or no to vote on the item. You can vote for the new law, let's say, but the government will say, we recommend you vote no, and if you do vote no, we will do the following thing to sort of make a compromise solution. And so I'll kind of explain how that looks here. So this is the first one is a new law or an initiative that would mean that health insurance premia can never be more than 10% of your income. So Switzerland has a private health insurance system where you have to purchase health insurance on the open market, and just like everywhere else, the health insurance premia are skyrocketing year after year. So there was an initiative. Some group decided to propose a law that would cap health insurance, so you never would have to pay more than 10% of your income. And basically, you can't read this, but basically says the situation is everybody in Switzerland has to have health insurance, and the premium keep rising and rising and rising. So this committee proposes that we have a law that says that nobody should have to pay more than 10% of their income for health insurance. The government says, no, we don't think you should do that. We think you should vote no or 9 for this proposal. But if you do vote no, we will do the following counter proposal. We will meet you in the middle, so to speak. So in this case, the initiative, the proponents want to have the premium capped at 10%. The government says, no, we don't think that's a good instrument for controlling health costs. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to ask the cantons to contribute. So if you have a hard time paying for your health insurance, there are some programs already that help where the government or the state helps subsidize your health insurance if you, in a means-tested way. If you have trouble affording it, the federal government currently covers most of the cost of that, or all of the cost of that. And the counter proposals that the cantons should also pitch in to make the relief a little bit more for people who can't afford health insurance. So that's a kind of it's perhaps a little bit of a dry one. And they say here, it says the recommendation of the government is to vote no, and the recommendation of the initiative committee, the people who put it forward, is yes, obviously. And this is the name of the Bezahlbare Premien.ch. Basically, it's a committee that has a website, and they call themselves Affordable Premium Switzerland. And this shows how the parliament voted on this. The parliament already voted no internally. So that's one. And this is the short form of that. Then you have the short form of the second referendum item, which also happens to be about putting a brake on the cost of healthcare in the country. It's pretty dry on that. You have then the third initiative, which is called freedom. You need freedom and the right to not have your body violated, essentially, is what this one's about. And it's basically saying that the government should be prohibited from forcing you to have things like immunizations or other medical treatments and other things which are seen as a violation of your bodily integrity. It comes from people that ultimately, I think, were reacting to the COVID pandemic and the sort of near requirement to have be immunized in the country. The government also recommends you vote no on that. Then you have the third initiative, or the fourth initiative, which is the one that's probably getting the most press, which is about a new law that's going to make it promote the electric power generation through renewable resources, namely solar cells and wind turbines and so on. And this one has more of the national attention. In this particular case, it's all about providing subsidies for the development of renewable energy sources, and that means also relaxing the laws in terms of the planning permissions laws required for building a big solar farm or something. Right now, the planning permissions process in Switzerland is very onerous for those kinds of things. So this law, and it's controlled at the local level, so it makes it very bureaucratic to put up a big solar farm. This law wants to make it a national framework, so you don't have to go through each individual local community's legal framework or planning framework to get things done. You can just live by one national set of ground rules. It will promote renewable energy, and it will also loosen the bureaucracy or make it a little bit less bureaucratic to put up these installations, basically. So the government is and they're couching it as a way to guarantee Switzerland's self-sufficiency in energy, so that less has to be imported from outside, from Russian gas and other things. So we want to try to move towards more self-sufficiency on electricity, and also help towards the climate goals of zero carbon emissions and so on. So that's the whole background of the initiative. The government, in this single case of all the four initiatives, this is the only one that the government is suggesting that you vote yes. And there is another committee called Electricity Law No. That's the name of the committee that's fighting against it. The government internal votes has already voted, or the parliament, I should say, has already voted overwhelmingly in favor of it. And then for each of these, where there's the yes and the no, it says the government recommends yes, and it explains in brief why. We believe that this is going to secure our electric production, which is desperately needed. It also protects nature and our land and our landscape. And it's also a concrete step in the direction of reducing our fossil fuel use. So that's what the government's sort of position is and how they justify it. And the no people say, we don't think you should vote for this because this is going to cause destruction of, they say the opposite, destruction of natural landscapes, because they're afraid people are going to put huge solar farms in the mountains and cut down forests to put solar farms and so on. So this is saying it's going to be a hazard for nature. And it also, because there are national, it's a national framework, it takes away the sovereignty of the local communities in making their own planning rules. And Switzerland is a country that's sort of very local. So that's the sort of the basis around these laws. Then you go into a detailed version of the same. So you'll have then, for every one of these initiatives, you'll have a very long and very detailed description of the same thing in case you want more information. And then again, so sorry, I should go back and say, first you have the description of the initiative, and then you have the argument for the of the people who are wanting to have, in this case, the cheaper health insurance premiums. So a long background about it, and then the whole detailed argument is why the people who have brought the referendum forward, why they think you should vote for it, followed by, in this case, the government's position, a very detailed explanation for why they think you should not vote for it. And that's just the first of the four. So then we go to the actual text, legal text of the referendum in blue paper. And then we go to the second referendum. And once again, a very detailed background explanation with graphs and charts, followed by a detailed laying out of the arguments for the people who are in favor of the referendum, followed by a detailed laying out of the argument of the government, which in this case is against. And again, for the third one. So for all four of them, you get this very detailed explanation for what it's about. And I would say, even if you haven't been watching the news or reading the news and you haven't seen any debates, there's enough information in this pamphlet to give you everything you'd need, all the detail you would want. So you could have been living in a cave, and then you'd get this pamphlet and you'd have all the information you need to make a sound decision. And I have to say, it seems pretty fair, pretty unbiased. It's pretty straightforward and black and white. This is what the proponents say. This is what the opponents say. And then this is the very same thing, but for the local initiative in my local town, which is Toon. So having read all that stuff, you'd fill out yes, yes, no, no, however you want to vote, yeah, nine, and you do the same here. You would put both of those things in this envelope, and then you'd include your voting card with it, and then you'd put it all in this envelope and you'd send it back. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a nice view of what a Swiss referendum is like, and what you get in the pack, and what it's like to vote in one, and some maybe more detail than you ever wanted in terms of what happens in the referendum and what you're being presented with, and all the information that you're provided to make your decision. So there you go, a Swiss referendum in a glance, and a little bit about the Swiss political system also as background. Hope you enjoyed.